So the quote I went looking for last time, excuse me. My name is Michael Miller. This is the Michael Miller Pilates. Actually, it's a Michael Miller trademark training video presented on YouTube first as a live broadcast. If it's live for you too, welcome and thank you for joining me. And if it's not live for me, then at least for you, and thank you for listening. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates. It's meant for the Cornu Core and anyone interested in surviving as a Pilates instructor. That's my main point of focus and profession and interest, is in helping you understand the MMP view of things when it comes to Pilates, and to know about Cornu tension when it comes to biomechanics. And whether you're interested in Pilates or not, Cornu tension is what it is in and of itself, which is an awareness of the way the biology of the body engages itself to move through space, through oppositional rotation between axes, right? Those 4 words we talked about last time, defining Cornu tension. Oppositional rotation between axes. And you can demonstrate it just as easy as pie. Especially when you have the opposition going and you seek to pull the axis of the ears, or your ears right over your shoulders. You seek to pull that rotation right over the top of that one. Cornu tension. But before that, in my broadcast, I went looking for it and couldn't find Joe's words, where he says, always keep your mind wholly concentrated on the purpose of the exercises as you perform them. This is vitally important in order for you to gain the results sought. Otherwise, there would be no valid reason for your interest in contrology, which of course is the name of his method. The name of the book that this comes out of is titled Return to Life Through Contrology. And contrology is what he called his method while he was alive. So, I want to try to keep this short because it feels like it could become so long. So, that's Joe's quote about staying focused and concentrated on the purpose of the exercises as you perform them. Right? And so it assumes there's purpose in the effort. Now, I have such compassion for you if you're learning Pilates and you're being taught that Pilates is a mixture of other practices. That's a translator's words of Portuguese, right? But the body on the Pilates equipment here and elsewhere, so there's a building history, is one of a body making an artistic expression, my opinion and my view, on Pilates equipment, without really knowing that there's more of a purpose to the exercise than the expression is making. And in that regard, I'm making a distinction between dance is art. Dance is art. And my first inclination was to say Pilates is physics. But more simplistically and more related to making the simplicity of saying art is or dance is art, to me, my impression, and only did I care enough to make a distinction that Pilates is real. Pilates is reality. It's the pursuit of the expression of it. There's something real in it that one can make artistic impression of, but not be the same as the reality that exists within the expression. If that's way too abstract, I'm sorry. But to me, it makes a difference to survive as a Pilates instructor, knowing that in the world out there, it's being taught that Pilates is a mixture of other practices. And an example of one of those is ballet. Because to me, obviously, the body that the position is being an image taken of is more balletic than it is Pilates-esque, right? In that Pilates has an identity that's more real than it is surreal or just impressionistic of. So I assume you know enough about Reformer, at least up to the intermediate level. But there are patterns in the Reformer of, in stomach massage, it's round back, flat back, twist. And there's no side bend because it really doesn't fit in the flow of things. And that's just my reason, but there's no side bend because it's not in Joe's film of that sequence of movements. But flexion, extension, twisting is. And then in short box, it's a performance of a movement pattern of round back, flat back, side to side, and then rotation. That pattern in Joe's original work. Okay? In knee stretches, it starts in round back and flexion, and then if you have control of that, as in all of these, you expand your control to the opposite of flexion into extension. Right? And we went from sitting on the floor in stomach massage to sitting on a chair in short box to on all fours. In knee stretches to standing up from the knee stretches into elephant. And all of those are sequences of pattern within a broader pattern, a consistent pattern anyway, of flexion, extension, side bending, rotation, and torsion, being the progressiveness of the movement patterns that the ideal definition refers to. The ideal definition is uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement, and that progressive pattern is flexion, extension, side bending, rotation, and torsion. So, as an instructor, to the extent that you can recognize a movement pattern that's happening and willfully, intuitively decide what movement pattern you're going to next, if it's within the structure of the original pattern in Joe's original work, then you're doing Pilates in whatever way it comes out, because your choice of expression of the ideal matches the ideal within the original work. And so the association of dance and the resemblance to elephant arabesque with a wide open hip axis and a straight back, if not extension in the back, takes it to where? To me, it takes it out to the fringe of artistic expression, to the thin ice where you're risking control for artistic expression. And to the point that instead of flexion from the hips through the shoulders and ears in elephant, arabesque, on the reformer, all of that, in my opinion, is meant to be done in flexion, in the challenge of holding flexion while you're trying to expand range through the leg that's up and out. And why is that? Because when I see someone in some resemblance to the elephant arabesque, but it's in some degree of extension from hips to shoulders, that means there's a lot of crease at the hip. And for the most part, my impression of performing the exercises, the purpose of the exercises is to get to uniform development, hence the uniform engagement sought. And the sharp crease at the hip diminishes one's capacity for uniform engagement. That's my opinion, but that's what I'm saying. That's the point in what I'm making, is that the elephant is about staying round and in a big arc of flexion from hips, shoulders to ears. And if the reverse of that flexion happens at the hip, out the legs, either the supported one or the out one. So to the extent that you crease at the sternum, to the extent that your body is a piece of tubing, and to the extent that you make a crease in the tubing, right, to where it's a crimp in the hose, you diminish the capacity of the organism to be uniformly engaged. And so, to me, Pilates is what Joe said it was, and took pictures of and took film of, and that my interpretation of that matches what's there in Joe's original work. And in my opinion, you don't see much of a big crease at sternum, or not sternum, but crease at hip in elephant, because it's not open at the hip. You want that same openness of hip in all of the exercises you perform in Pilates, because it's the most uniform engagement that you can muster. and and so and so. There's nothing wrong with artistic expression on Pilates equipment. But as an instructor, I want you to know the difference between what's artistic expression, which is not real in the sense that it's an impression, right? It's art. And art either reflects reality or leads reality, but usually there's a distinction made between the two. And the distinction that I want you to be aware of, from my point of view, is that Pilates is real. And in the pursuit of Pilates, you pursue the realness of a round back, and the realness of a flat back, and the realness of actually bending sideways and having it truly be sideways. And that those movements constitute a shape and space of the body, dynamically engaged but held throughout the performance of the exercises. So to me, there's pursuit of ideal in doing the real. And that in the doing of the real is in pursuit of the ideal, which means things like round and flat and sideways and rotation. And I've got no objection to art demonstrating the range of the expression that meant to be Pilates. But as an instructor, and I think you as an instructor, is not to take a student out onto thinner ice, but to deepen the ice that's already there. You know, to go toward the core to get stronger, and out of that effort comes the range. That's the paradox, one of them in teaching Pilates, that I'm pointing to here about the end range of things and the ideal expression of things. The closer your expression is toward the more fundamental ideal involved, not only is it a better expression of the ideal, but you get the benefit from having expressed the ideal so fundamentally, so clearly. Like square hips, like a smooth round in the spine, like holding a flat back as you move from the hips, all that kind of stuff. So to me, Pilates is, from what I specialize, Pilates is not a mixture of other practices, dance being one of them. I've talked before about the influences of other modalities, like dance and yoga and martial arts and aerobics and healing arts and crystal bowls and whatever else. Those are influences that come in to make an impression on the ideal nature of Pilates, but from my understanding of history, when dancers got injured, they went to Joe to get better so they could go back to dance. And that says it all right there. Dance is one thing, and what you do to dance is another. The conditioning, the patterning, the routine, the conditioning, it's a great word. What you do to condition yourself to be able to maintain the rigors of a discipline, like dance, like acting, like skiing. The list goes on and on. However you use your body as a human, comes to do the routine of Pilates, the practice of Pilates, in order to condition it to handle whatever else you subject to it. Oh, all right. And so along those lines, I would make the point that I know of original footage, film that Joe took, two different sets of films, 40 years apart. You know, at the beginning of his career and toward the end of his career, but 40 years difference by the man himself, documenting his mat work, and the sequence is unchanged. The choreography is unchanged, right? And so as much as it's great to paint oneself into a picture of Joe did what he did, and now I'm doing what I'm doing, and someone else will do what they're doing, is all true to a point, but to whatever extent what happens or gets passed down matches the point that Joe made all by himself. That you can have a direct relationship to and understand and be able to teach toward that and create the experience that empowers you as an instructor, I hope. And so, I thank the blessed stars that I've been able to make a recording, and that the people that carry the recording have allowed it to happen. And I recognize that's not always the case, and so I'm grateful for that. And the question of how to commercialize your passion and whether you want to or not is completely up to you. And a purist, I think, would be the first and foremost to say, you know, never let money get into it, other than when you have to pay for in order to get access to what you want access to, whether it's a teacher or a studio or a training program or a union, any of that. Business. I choose to monetize what I do by associating the training materials that I make to my brand, my trademark. And under that brand, I sell lots of stuff, and I hope you go buy it all. And can't wait for more. And to that extent are students of mine who get more than what I offer here, right? I don't know. I think I pretty much ought to just stay to this. Keep it free. Because you can learn what you have to learn from me, which everything that I've already recorded. It's all there. And how you assimilate it and how you choose to use it or not in your effort to survive as a Pilates instructor is up to you. Right? It's much better. I wish I hadn't said anything, but it just so blows my mind that people are under an impression that Pilates is whatever you make of it. And that shouldn't surprise me, because I talk about the 10,000 things, all the different ways that Pilates is looked at, and that you have your way of looking at it too. To what extent is the way you look at it art? And to what extent is the way you look at it real? And I would think that to the extent that you embrace both spectrums of that, the art and the real, the better both will become. But to think that Pilates is a mixture of other practices, and here's the one I'm good at, I'm going to show you an expression of that I care about in my world. It could just as easily be a hockey player with a stick raised aloft, ready to strike. See what I mean? Maybe not. It may be time to give up these recordings. The crease at the hip is to me an uneducated assumption that that's as much Pilates as an open hip. And my only decider in this, or orientation in looking at that, is to what extent does one give one more uniform engagement versus the other? And how much more important is it to maintain a smooth curve between hips, shoulders, and ears in flexion before one ever goes off into further dimensionality? Out to the side, up and behind, a complete loss of orientation of hip, maybe not loss, but refined control of hip axis to the axis that the supporting leg is playing off of. If I am an instructor, which I profess to be, then when I instruct, I like to get paid for it so that everybody feels good about it. Because it's nice to be paid for your profession. And to the extent that your student may not wish to have the level of their relationship seem to go from friendship to something they got to pay for, it would be no different if it were a dance studio or a martial arts dojo or anywhere else. And it's up to the instructor, it's up to you as the teacher or the instructor, in case of to what extent the thing happens, as to how the value is exchanged. Because if you deny a person their ability to just come in and pay for it and be done with it, right? You really don't act as an instructor. I don't act in the confidence that they'll want to come back of their own and they don't need to be tied to it financially, right? Care less about how the rest of the world works and try to focus on the way you want the world to interact with you, and then be able to make a value exchange that happens between you and your student by PayPal, by check, any which way, by chickens, by eggs. You know, it doesn't matter. As long as the instructor, you establish value and allow them to embrace that relationship for all of the value that comes with it. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. You know, I'm not good at a lot of this. Add 2 and 2, right? Add 2 and 2. If I can help, see, if I can help you make money, where we both make money, that would be ideal, right? And helping others make money, mostly just doing what they already know how to do. My deal is my brand is my trademark, and you can use my brand with a relationship of an affiliate, or you can just point to it indirectly. And there's no charge. You don't even have to use my trademark. Just know how to make the curlicues. Just know how to make horn retention on your own. But when you seek to commercialize, I would try to affiliate with the best brand out there that gave me the most freedom for doing whatever it is I wanted to do. And yet held myself out as someone that could instruct a student in that ideal, right? Ring, ring, ring. I'm looking for a Michael Miller Pilates session. Can you teach MMP? You know, of course, you can teach anything, right? You're an instructor, and you know everything else. What could be different? Maybe nothing. The point being, for you to have any credibility in being able to teach MMP, you at least have to be able to talk about it. And to the extent that you're already listening to this, probably you already can, right? So you're good to go. But the better clientele that you want will want the deepest understanding of what you have, and to the level of your ability to deliver on your understanding, whether it's intellectually as you explain it and teach it, or as an instructor where you offer instruction in the performance of it. Direct your thinking. I hope in this broadcast you picked up the uniform development requires uniform usage, and some artistic expressions in the body diminish the target of what you're after in the performance of the effort, vaguely demonstrated. See what I mean? Know what you know. Know why you know it. And then as you discover it, see, I keep forgetting that you have just come to this and you're eating up this part of my explanation of things, and yet in your own body, you really still haven't found your endpoints and your connections, ribs to hips and knuckles to neck and all those things where you really have a connection to core new tension in your own body as you make whatever performance you make, whether it's Pilates or anything else. Right? Don't be afraid to use my words as your own. And don't go publish a book with just one long stream of my words. Right? That's infringement. But if someone calls up and says, MMP, can I get a lesson? And you off the top of your head say, well, I know what you mean when you talk about uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement, right? You may not want to deliver all that right off the bat, but if you did, you would at least be giving the definition of the ideal that MMP represents, right? Now, if they know what you're talking about, they're really going to be happy about it. And if they don't know what you're talking about, they're really going to want to learn. See? As with Joe, as soon as the guy turns up dead, because he's dead, people can make of it whatever they want. And we all do. And MMP is just one view of Pilates, and there are thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, if not millions, because each of us has our own view of what this thing is supposed to be. I sometimes think it's not fair for me to point out to you how close to the real wick of Pilates you're standing when you're talking about Michael Miller Pilates and owning your understanding of uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement, and how much of a compass that is in how you choose what you pick next with the body that you see in front of you. Right? As an instructor, there's a tremendous amount of creativity and art and skill and experience and intuition that play into that moment where you're hanging on, playing everything, be safe, right? Always. Number one thing is looking for danger and staying safe and anticipating where it could go south, is my expression, but where something unexpected could happen, or where the student could lose control because they're your student and you're instructing, that you're supposed to be there for when that happens, and have it apparently never even become an issue. Right? Right. So part of director thinking is always toward the safety of the environment, because more than likely you're the one that's most sensitive to the environment you're in that scenario. There's a difference between art and real. Or is there? I don't know. It's a great discussion. Are they one and the same thing? To the extent that you do Pilates, it's movement, and the performance of that movement is in the pursuit of round and flat and sideways and twisting. And to the extent that you idealize those, you idealize the expression in reality. What am I trying to say? Expressing art has a much larger palette than the expression of the ideal within that range. Only and only in the narrow sense of ideal being what you see or feel or are in alignment in terms of 3 points on a smooth curve, whether it's flexion or extension, 3 points on a straight line. A sideways plane that's as truly sideways as it can be. And then all the rotation in between. I just don't know how the world doesn't know about the grip at the hip, and that how much of our movement through space is just like a whip. Here's a bull whip, and there's a long rigid part to it, and it's from that rigidity that you control the rest of the whip. And it's from the control you develop at your core, that is the handle of the whip, in relationship to the way the rest of the body moves. So I'm amazed that you bought my book and found a physical copy, and I don't know where it came from. Read between the lines, see behind the curtain, and all that. Add two and two. Direct your thinking, and recognize that you're the one directing your thinking. Geist.